Hello, everybody. Amber here. Welcome back to In Conversation with ATF. Now, I'm in my bedroom. I've got voice actors all over my walls. I've got Frank Welker, I've got Kevin Conroy, I've got Peter Cullen, I've got Gray Delisle over back here and stuff like that. And I hope this voice actor joins my wardrobe gang when I come over in March. You may know him as the voice of the following characters: Benny in Top Cat the movie and Top Cat Begins, Benny the Bull, that is. August Critchley in Tom and Jerry Cowboy Up. The Typing Bunny in Look. Camo in The Wild, the little chameleon little dude. Is that his name? Yeah, I thought that was his
correct.
name.
Camo.
Pig, Rattlesnake, LP, and Diamond, who are both horses, the last two are horses in Doctor Dolittle 3. Also on cartoons such as Alfred in Sophia the First, Crustacian in Transformers Robots in Disguise 2015, spoof characters like Megatron and Shrek in Mad, Rolf and Rudy in The Tom and Jerry Show, and also different Hanna-Barbera characters in Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, and Drawn Together, and also different shows like Codename Kids Next Door, Clarence, and also The Simpsons, where he has voiced multiple characters, and there's too many, I can't name them all at once. There we go. Got out of my mouth. Whew, I find it so hard to talk sometimes. My guest has also done voices for video game franchises such as Ty The Tasmanian Tiger, Final Fantasy, G.I. Joe, Assassin's Creed, Mass Effect, Disney Infinity, Halo, Skylanders, Naruto, Apex Legends, and specific characters like Scuttle in Disney Princess My Fairy Tale Adventure, Gyro Gearloose in DuckTales Remastered, Ren in Nicktoons MLB, Man Bat and Mad Hatter in Lego Batman the video game, and also Alvin. Okay, I'm gonna get this wrong now because I've literally just seen this character and I'm just gonna take a guess. It's either Alvin Weiner or Wiener in Scooby Doo Unmasked.
Let's go with I don't know. Let's go with whatever's funniest. Alvin Wiener is so
Alvin
much
Wiener
funny. Alvin
in
Wiener is so much
Scooby-Doo
funny.
Scooby-Doo Unmasked. I wonder who my guest is, and obviously he will most likely be on my wardrobe in the next few months. It's Chris Edgerly.
Hello.
Hello, Chris. How are you
Wow.
doing?
I did all that. Wow. Okay. It's been a
Yeah.
while. Yeah. Well, it's so much more fun hearing your resume read out in a charming British accent, though. So I
Oh,
rather enjoyed that. I wasn't about to interrupt.
thank you. Really appreciate that. And honestly, this whole time it gets confusing because there is a British actor who is who has the same name as you, same last name as you, but has an extra E between the L and the Y. But his name
Right.
is pronounced Chris Edgerly.
Edgerly, is it really?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's how it is pronounced. But then you've
Okay.
got Chris Edgerly and then Chris
Right.
Edgerly. And
I just thought
it's
it's Edge, RLY. Why would it not be Edgerly? But I've heard Edgerly, Ederly. Somebody actually said Edberg once, and I thought, well, you're just not trying, are you? So I did once on Twitter, the
uh-huh.
platform formerly known as Twitter, find
Mm-hmm.
this Chris Edgerly, seems to be a lovely man and far better looking than me, and a lot more hair, right, and
I
younger.
grew up watching him. I grew up watching
Okay,
him. That's
yeah,
how.
and yeah, he's got a bit of a career going on. And I said, we seem to frequently get confused with each other, but let's just make sure that we know that he does the on camera. I do the voice stuff, and we don't want to step on each other's toes. But someone has sometimes said, we have Chris Edgerly coming, and they'll use Chris Edgerly's headshot. I think I don't look like that, and he doesn't look like me. But we're both, I guess, sort of redheads. I think he may be
Yeah,
more of a strawberry blonde, and so people think, close enough. But
needs to have
but
you
he
and
was
for the
very
other
nice
Chris.
about it. Yeah,
Yeah,
he
it
was
needs to
very
have you and the other
gracious
Chris
about it.
on one episode. The two Chris Edgerleys. Just have
Yeah,
a joint episode. Just
right. Like if I ever make it over to England, and it's like, I guess he's probably down in London somewhere. He seems to
I
be.
think he is. Yeah, he does a lot of
Yeah, he
panto. He
seems to
just
be.
Yeah, I grew up watching him because there was a kids show that aired when I was younger. It was based on the Australian High Five TV show, like similar to the Wiggles, but like
Okay,
they did a UK version, and he was one of the presenters. And then I looked him up, and then you came up, and I was like, hang on, there's two Chris's. What's going on?
right. I did do some on camera back in the 90s. I was on Nickelodeon and just a couple of random parts here and there on other stuff. And then I was also a stand-up comedian and I was always touring. And I used to live in Orlando, Florida, where they shot a lot of the Nickelodeon stuff. So I briefly flirted with a sort of career and on camera in kids TV, but I was never a regular on anything. I would pop up regularly on shows like All That and Keenan and Kel, things like that. But that was a whole nother lifetime ago.
Yeah, definitely. And have you been to the Nickelodeon like the headquarters in LA? I've seen like the inside of it, but honestly, it looks so magical. It's like a big play place.
Yeah, it looks exactly like you would think it would look, right? Amidst all these other industrial buildings, and then you have this big splash of neon and green and orange, pink, whatever, and then you walk into their facility. And I've done the odd audition here and there, but any shows I've ever done that have aired on Nickelodeon, I've never actually recorded at Nickelodeon. It's always been some other studio, right? Wow. So yeah, go figure.
Yeah, and obviously, since the pandemic, everyone's really been recording from home, so not a lot of people really go into the studio anymore, like all the big studios like Disney or maybe on the Warner Brothers lot or anything like that. Would you prefer? Do you prefer recording from home or do you prefer recording in the studio?
I could do either. In terms of drive time, I absolutely love recording from home because, if I may, I'll show you.
Oh, you got a booth, haven't you? Oh my gosh!
Okay. That's my commute. Okay, so it's just I step into that room and I got my flat caps hanging on the side there. But yeah, so we used to have we bought this house a couple of years ago, and this is just a standard room, and that would have been a closet. We just ripped out the closet. I had this. This is lavocalbooths.com. They don't pay me to say that, but they made the booth for me, and they they did a great job, and I paid them for it, obviously. But this is a great professional level booth. I've got a nice professional level set up in there. It's not the absolute top end. I have some friends who have like rooms that are just devoted to a soundboard and everything is like vacuum sealed. It's astounding. But in this case, this is a pretty good booth, and I've got a pretty good setup in there. And with some productions I've worked on, they've said, you sound as good as we need you to sound. We can take this file and do everything we need to with it. So yeah, there's no need to come in. So, and I live outside of LA, just in an exurb. So that saves me a couple of hours round trip at least. And yet, when you go into a studio and there's somebody on the other side of the glass, and if you get somebody else to read with, I mean, that's amazing. I've always loved that. I've always loved reading with other people, bouncing off them. So I could do either. If they were to insist, I'd say, sure, I'm happy to come in. Right.
Yeah.
But,
and honestly, like you don't do it ensemble anymore. Like not barely anyone does ensemble in-person recordings anymore. And if they do it in person, it's just solo. Is there any shows that you have done that were recorded ensemble in a studio before?
Oh, sure. I remember Celebrity Deathmatch back in the aughts when you were just a toddler, most likely. You're what, about 22 now? I think you said
I'm 19.
19? You just graduated college. You're 19?
Well, wow. I mean, you can stay in college for a good few years, but I decided to bail out early. That's me.
Oh, okay. Wow. Still, a couple of years is not bad. And college is not for everybody. If it's not doing anything for you, then get the hell out of there. Don't waste your money or your time. But I would say, let's see, it's probably around 05 and 06. We worked on Celebrity Deathmatch when they brought it back for MTV2. That was ensemble, and that was one of the best times you could possibly have, because I would do Nick Diamond and Mills Lane, and the other host was a guy, I think his name was Roger Thornton. Wonderful voice he had, and he was this perfect voice match for the other host and on Celebrity Deathmatch. And it would be the two of us, and there were always 3 fight segments where 2 celebrities would fight. So they would have 3 chairs set up, and we would record an episode, and for each episode there'd be 3 separate segments, and you would get 3 people coming in, or 6 people coming in rather, to do their fights, and it would be 2 people at a time along with the 2 of us. And it was so much fun. There was so many laughs, and there was some great ad-libbing going on. And I remember Carlos Alazraqui coming in, and John DiMaggio coming in to do a fight. And it was Chris Farley versus Horatio Sanz from Saturday Night Live.
Oh,
and
wow.
The 2 of them just were, I could not stop laughing. We were having that much fun. And I thought, I'm so lucky to get to be here for this. Yeah, so definitely. That's one of the wonderful things that happens when you ensemble record. You just get to feed off the energy of the other actors.
Wow. Yeah, definitely. Honestly, I would love to be in a sort of session like that. And honestly, I feel like sad for like every voice actor in LA, like that you guys don't record ensemble anymore, because honestly, it sounds like it must have been so much fun. And I mean, okay, you might have messed around once or twice and joked around, but at least you got the job done. You had lots of fun. Like, best job in the world.
I like to think that for everyone that thinks, well, I bet it took longer because you guys were always joking around. Well, maybe it did, but I'll bet you it takes longer when you're Zooming everybody in too, if you're trying to ensemble it that way through a Zoom session, because there are technical glitches that happen. Even if you're just recording one person, you still get technical glitches. They just happen, and you just have to deal with it. So we always manage to get everything done within the allotted time. And it is true. It's because of the pandemic, everybody was forced to figure out how to do things remotely. And now that we've figured it out, a lot of people have also figured out that it's not as expensive when you don't have to rent an entire facility and schedule everybody on the same days. And it has streamlined the process. You lose a little bit of that secret sauce in some people's opinion, but if you're dealing with professionals, then they're still going to make it work. Everybody's going to do their part, and it's still going to be fine.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I'd love to talk about, of course, on like ensemble and recording together and stuff. Did you record the Transformers Robots in Disguise series ensemble? Was that a solo recording?
That was ensemble. That was one of the last things I did ensemble. It was a few years ago, but let's see. I remember there were 4 or 5 people in on that session, and I was just the guest star. So I can't remember everybody who was in there, but
I think Will Friedle was there.
Will Friedle was definitely there. I think let me see. I could look up the cast and tell you who was there and who was not. But let's see. Let's Google and I'll tell you if they were there. Let's take a look. Come in.
Maybe if you can lend him your headphones.
Okay. 1 second, Amber. I'm lending out my headphones to my son.
Okay.
I'm going to start recording again. Yeah. Okay. So I remember Kari Payton was there. Will Friedle was there.
Yeah.
Ted McGinley was there. And Constance Zimmer was there as well. I cannot say for sure who else was there. Some people might have popped in and out. But yeah, that was actually fun because everybody was super nice. And we recorded that at, let's see, that was, I can't remember the name of at Studiopolis. That's over in Burbank.
Oh, wow. Was it Jamie Simone who voice directed it?
He might have directed that episode. That is possible.
I think it was him. Yeah.
Yeah, he's directed quite a bit of stuff over there. In fact, I was hanging out there one day after a session. I don't know if it was that one or not. And he said, "Do you want to do an anime?" I said, "Sure." He said, "Okay, you're in this one." Right. And he's out. "I'll give you your agent a call and I'll tell you when to come in." And that's how casting works sometimes. Especially if it's anime, if you've done anime before and they know that you can do it, and they know you have the mechanical rhythm to do it, then it's sometimes they'll just plug you in because they'll say, you're going to be perfect for this guy. I know you can do these other voices, so we'll just get you slotted right in. And then when I was doing that one, he said, "You want to do another anime?" I said, "Sure." He's all right. I'll send you over to Jeff Nimoy, who's directed every anime there is. And yeah, so that's how it happens sometimes. It's
so
that casual,
cool.
but that happens only when you have sort of proved that, you don't suck. And then they'll say, okay, he's not going to bog the whole production down. Let's do it.
Yeah. It was Jamie Simone who voice directed the whole show.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. And because I looked at the credits list for the episode that you were in, and I was like, Frank Welker was in it as Soundwave, and I was like, did you get to work with him on that episode? But I presumed obviously not, because he wasn't a part of the main cast.
Right. And there was a time where I did get to record with him, and I've only gotten to record with him once. And this was back in, I know, he is on my Mount Rushmore of voice actors. Actually, he's on everyone's Mount Rushmore of voice actors, as he should be.
Yeah.
So I was doing a pilot for Disney based on Mulan. And so at the time, Disney had commissioned, I think, 3 or 4 pilots. Yeah. One of them was for Mulan. I think one of them was for The Emperor's New Groove.
Yeah, that went forward.
There were a couple of other ones based on other Disney movies that were fairly recent. And they were only going to choose one. And they chose Emperor's New Groove, which became Emperor's New School.
Yeah.
But I was doing Mulan, and for that one, I voice matched Harvey Firestein's character because they didn't want to do it.
Right.
So I did that character, and we're sitting over at, this was at LA Studios, which is right at the edge of Universal City. Yeah. And I'm hanging out in the waiting room, and I see this guy sitting next to me. And I said, "Oh, who are you here to work with?" He says, "Oh, I'm going to do Mulan." I said, "Oh, I'm going to do Mulan." I said, I said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to do this character." He goes, "Oh, I'm doing the cricket. I just do animal noises." Yeah. He said, "I just do animal noises." And I said, and me not knowing that it was Frank Welker, because I didn't know what Frank Welker looked like. I said, "Well, you could do pretty well in this business doing animal noises, and trying to make him, pump himself up a little bit, I guess." And he said, yeah, I know. And I said, "I'm Chris." He goes, "Hi, I'm Frank Welker." And I just kind of went, okay. What an idiot I am.
That's brilliant.
He was the nicest guy, and everybody says that about him because it's true. He's the nicest guy, and insanely talented. You're sitting there. I was sitting next to him, and I heard him doing the cricket, and then I heard him doing whatever other noises they needed him to do, and it was just all perfect. Everything was absolutely perfect, as though that animal had been captured with a live recording. It was just wonderful watching somebody at that level operate. And probably a lot of voice actors will say this, especially if you come from a smaller town, you don't come from LA. If you come from Los Angeles, then you're used to being around people who are amazing at things, because it's a giant place and it attracts the most talented people. Same as New York. Same thing, for London. And I came from Savannah, Georgia, which is a small pond, and I was used to being like the most talented voice actor in Savannah and up in college, and then down in Orlando. You're used to being that big fish. And you come out to LA and you realize, okay, you're still, you're not any less talented, but comparatively speaking, you are not a big fish. You're barely a fish. And then you get to sit in the room with a whale, talent-wise and experience-wise and reputation-wise. And you realize how far you have to go. But it's not, it's only intimidating if you let it be intimidating. If you have a better attitude about it, then you simply appreciate what you're getting to witness, and you tell yourself, well, why don't I chase that, right? I'll never reach that, but why don't I aspire to be that good professionally, to be that experienced, that skilled, and that easy to work with on top of that. That's an attitude you can adopt right away. Just be as pleasant as like Frank Welker would be in a recording session.
Definitely. I was going to ask you, aside from Frank, is there any other voice actors that you've worked with that you've ever been blown away by, impressed?
Oh, sure.
I'm in awe.
Sure. Like, I mean, the whole the whole cast of The Simpsons blows you away every time you're sitting down with them. And this is after being around them for years. And you're just thinking, oh my God, I still can't believe I get to be in the same show. And I remember once working with Jeff Bennett, and he was somebody whose work I was aware of, but this was in one of my first couple of years, like in my first 3 or 4 years of really starting to work as a voice actor in LA. So this would have been early mid aughts. And this was at LA Studios where they record a lot of Disney stuff. And I can't remember what we were working on. I can't remember if it was a commercial or if it was a piece of animation, but it was just Jeff and myself for this recording session. And I'm pretty good at hopping from voice to voice. Like I'm good at that. It's part of my range. But I watched Jeff do it, and I thought, this is insane. This is insane how good he is. Really, how good he is. And I told my agent later, because I've never been shy about just praising somebody else that's really that good. And you just sort of accept it. It's like, okay, you're not the big fish, get over it. And I told my agent, Pat Brady, she's the reason I have a career. I said, Pat, Jeff Bennett, I just worked with that guy. That guy's amazing. And she said, oh, I think Jeff's the best in the business. And I just thought I was really lucky to get to work with him, right? Just to watch that happen. So, yeah, it's awesome.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree. I think Jeff would be really good for my podcast, but it's just so hard to get a hold of some people who I really want and stuff. But I suppose it's just
you got some pretty big names on here already. I've seen your list of people. I'm just dragging you down. I don't know why you
don't
figured fine. I guess I have to put Edgerly on eventually.
It's all right. It's all right, because I was going to say I have a list of dream guests on my phone, and a lot of them, and I think you're on there. I need to remove you now that I've managed to.
Well, you can cross that off. Yeah.
Then trying to cross them off. I think another one who we had to reschedule it, but I'm not sure when exactly we're going to talk. But I managed to get another dream guest, and this is a future episode, so you heard it here first. Fred Tattershaw.
Well, I'll tell you, with Fred, you're going to have a blast to begin with.
Yeah.
He's one of the most talented people you'll ever see. He's one of the best in the business. And on top of that, Fred and I have been friends ever since 2000 because we were at the same smaller agency.
Yeah.
When I signed with Pat Brady, the first person I met at her office was Fred Tattershaw. And he came in and she said, oh, this is Fred. Fred, this is Chris. Chris is a new guy. Fred's been working a lot lately. And Fred and I worked on our very first job together, or my very first job in LA. I'd been in town for 3 years, and I was still doing stand-up, going out on the road, coming back, going out on the road, coming back, and I wasn't gaining any traction in town. And I finally said, I really need to find a voice acting agent. And because of the generosity of John Rust and Bernadette Bowman, they were working in soundtracks at Universal Studios. And I'd done a couple of theme park rides for them. And they said, we'll get you a meeting with this agent, Pat Brady. We think she'd like you. You guys had hit it off. So Pat signed me. And she said, are you in SAG yet? Screen Actors Guild. And I said, I'm SAG eligible. Because when I lived in Orlando, we would all do one SAG job. And then we would not do any other SAG jobs. And we would do non-union work because Florida is called a right to work state. And you can do non-union or union. You can do either one. But if you do one SAG job, they call you SAG eligible, and you're allowed to keep working non-union stuff. But as soon as you do your second SAG job, you have to join the union. And then all your non-union opportunities go away. So I did what everyone did in Florida, work one SAG job, and then do non-union stuff because there was more of it. And so you could make more of a living that way. But when I moved to LA, I was still SAG eligible. And here it is, 3 years later, it's 2000. She said, are you SAG? I said, I'm SAG eligible. And she said, okay, let me go ahead and fix that. She picks up a phone and she says to me, and by the way, this is when phones had, bases and
fairly cords.
The wall. Yeah. This is how old I am. She just picks up the phone. She goes, can you do Michael Rappaport? Because we had talked about all these impressions I was doing. So the actor Michael Rappaport, I said, I think so. And she puts in a VHS tape of this movie called The Pallbearer, starring Michael Rappaport and David Schwimmer from Friends. And there's a scene with Michael Rappaport. Michael Rappaport comes in, he's talking. She plays that scene. She goes, all right, let me hear it. And I do my impression of Michael Rappaport. She goes, all right, that'll work. She picks up the phone, calls up the production. She says, all right, I got your Michael Rappaport. Yeah. Okay, click. Be at this place tomorrow. You're in the union now. Thought, oh my God, really? She goes, yeah. And that's when I met Fred. We were doing ADR, automated dialogue replacement, or some people just call it additional dialogue recording. So when you take a movie that is played in theaters and maybe has some language that needs to be cleaned up, you do ADR. And sometimes the actor from the movie will be available and they'll re-record their dialogue to clean up the dialogue. Sometimes they're not available or they don't want to do it. And they hire people like me, voice matchers, and we do it. And we take the direction. We do whatever they need for the scene. So at that recording session was Fred, and Fred was doing David Schwimmer. He did a great David Schwimmer. I was doing Michael Rappaport, and Fred and I became fast friends. Cut to 10 years later when I got married, Fred, I went to my agent, Pat, and I said, one of my friends has got to be a priest. Between all the comedians that I know, all the actors I know, somebody's got to be a priest. And she said, oh, Fred is. I said, wait, are you kidding? He goes, yeah, he's an ordained minister. I said,
wow.
Really? He said, yeah, the Universal Life Church of Modesto, California. It's an online ministry. And it's like non-denominational. It's like we just, everybody's everybody. And it's not particularly religious. It's just, you want somebody who will marry you legally, then that's where that's where you go. And Fred married my wife and me, and we have wedding photos, and there's us, our families. Like I got most of my family couldn't make it, but two of my brothers are there. And my agent Pat's there with her husband Bob, voice actor Bob.
Oh yeah,
Joel.
Bob. Yeah, I've had him on my show. He's one of the first people I had.
Nolan North was there because I asked him, hey, so Nolan made it out with his wife Jill.
Wow.
And there's Fred, and Fred was doing a convention, I think in Long Beach or somewhere in Orange County. He drove up from the convention, did the ceremony, and then drove back to finish the convention. And then we all went out for dinner. So ask Fred that story.
Of course I will. Oh my gosh, right. I gotta remember that. No, I will remember that. That is like probably one of the most significant stories I've ever had on my show. Yeah.
And Fred and I do two characters in Naruto Shippuden. He's Kakuzu and I'm Hidan, and they're always at each other's throats, traveling together and murdering people. And if you watch Naruto Shippuden and you see Hidan and Kakuzu, now you know that the voice actor of one of them conducted the wedding ceremony of the voice actor of the other of them, of these two murderous thugs. One of them is an ordained minister, and the other one was married to his wife by that one. So,
that is amazing. That's such an amazing story.
Strange business, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, strange but wonderful business. Definitely.
Yeah, it is. It is indeed.
Wow, that's got to be the highlight of this interview. I've got to say, it's something I did not know.
There you go. There's your 10-second TikTok clip.
Yay! And then just like, I just thought of the tagline for this now. Chris Edgerly joins me on my show to discuss his British doppelganger and which famous VA officiated the marriage between him and his wife.
Yeah. There you go. This is like pub trivia, It's
pub
trivia. You're having a pint.
Gosh, yes.
It's C. It's always C. It's Chris Edgerly. No, Edgerly. Edgerly. Yay. It's C. All right.
And you were on about additional voices, which actually I've got to bring up that your son Remy Edgerly is also a voice actor. So
yes, he is.
Do you mind talking about him, or like how did he want to get into the bit? Well, of course, obviously, he wanted to get into the business, I believe. But how did he start out? Start.
Well, my wife is a performer too. She's a singer, and she grew up with two sisters, and they were known singers in her home country of Venezuela. And she grew up in Caracas, and she and her sisters would sing backup for people. And Obviously, I've been a performer for basically my whole adult life. And we have two kids. We have two beautiful kids, Remy and Violet. And Violet is an artist. She loves to create. She's only 10, and she's working on her tablet all the time, making these wonderful animations.
Wow.
She's done the odd voiceover audition, but it's not really her bag. And Remy, on the other hand, has always been very gregarious and very, very friendly. Violet is a little more reserved. She takes longer to get to know you and warm up. Remy has never met a stranger. And so even when he was not even 2 years old, we'd be pushing him in a stroller. And with his pacifier in his mouth, if he saw kids walking on the other side of the street, he'd lean out of his stroller and say, "Hey, guys," like that. Always ready to make a friend. And I would bring the kids into the office with me on Fridays over at CESD. If I had like an audition to do and it was the end of the week, I'd bring them into the booth and I would let them just ramble into the microphone. And I have about a dozen or more clips still in my iTunes of the engineer, Scott, at CESD recording me talking to Remy and Violet.
Wow.
And he got so used to just talking on the mic, and we would still send in auditions from home as well whenever we could. So he would talk on that mic, just blah, 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 blah. And CESD is a pretty good kids division. And I asked CESD, I said, "Do you mind if I throw him into a voice acting audition or two for kid stuff?" And they said, "Sure, if you want to." And I said, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And he would do one every now and then. And then about 6 months later, and this is when he was not quite 7, he was 6 years old, he booked a job. And it was on, let's see, I think it was just I don't know if this was the very first job he booked or not. I think it was for the Disney show Tots for Disney Junior.
Yeah.
So if you know that show, it's basically about storks that are delivering babies.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure one of the storks is a flamingo and one of them's a penguin, I think.
Oh, yeah, flamingo and a penguin, yeah.
Yeah.
So he became one of the, like a recurring character, Zed. There were 3 little storks or flamingos that wanted to follow in the footsteps of the main character and deliver babies. And Remy had such a sweet little voice, and you can look up the episodes that he's in and hear him. So here he is, 6 years old, and he's joined the union because they had to Taft-Hartley him, which is what they do when they put you on a show. If you've not joined yet, you have to fill out all the extra paperwork. But they did that for him. And here he is, almost 7 years old, and he's holding up his SAG card, smiling in front of the building where he had just joined. And I thought to myself, I joined the union at 30. And he's not even 7. And he is a recurring character on this show. And I asked the agency about that. I said, how's he doing with his auditions? They said he's great. There's something about his voice that just sort of cuts through. There's a quality to it that I don't know how they were able to describe it, nor were they. Some people just have voices that sort of cut through and are, I don't know, they're just more memorable to the ear. And that's the kind of vocal quality he had. And it paid off with him booking a few things. And we've always put his money away for him. I would always let him have $40 out of every paycheck. And so he was like this 7, 8-year-old kid, and he has this Teen Titans Go Velcro wallet that could barely fit into the pocket of his little tiny pants. And he's walking around the local village with this wallet with $40 in it. And if he wanted something, we would walk over to the toy store and he would get it. I'd say, you get to spend that $40 on anything you want, but when you spend it, it's gone. Okay. And you don't get any more money until you get another job or residuals come in. And he goes, "What are residuals?" And I said, "Oh, let me tell you about the magic of residuals." And so I've got, right here, residuals for him that I just haven't deposited yet.
Wow.
So, yeah, he still gets them coming in, and he works the odd job. But
I was going to ask, is he still doing it?
Everybody. Yeah, he still does it. There aren't as many auditions right now because there's a strike, and when the strike ends, I think things will open up a bit more.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
he has been working on one project for a while. And even if there was not a strike, I couldn't tell you about it because of the NDA.
NDA, yeah,
Because of the
yeah.
NDA, he has been working on it for a long time. And then one day it will finally be out and I can tell the whole world, and I certainly will, because it's a wonderful project. And, you know,
Yeah, and he's
he's
done
a part of
ADR
it.
work on a few films as well. I think he did the second Sing movie as well, but obviously we can't really talk about that because of the strike. But he did work on that.
Right.
Wow.
Well, no, be careful. It is funny.
Like,
There was a project he worked on, and I remember taking him to it. And I remember we had him in a Montessori school, which is a private school here. And they're a bit looser with attendance and things like that, but you still have to fulfill California state obligations. If your child is working on a weekday and it's during school hours, you have to make sure that they get their schooling. And so there was an on-set tutor there, and it was a bunch of people just doing ADR. So they would bring kids in and they would do their ADR, and then they would work with the tutor and have their workbooks and do their stuff, and then they'd go home. And I remember taking them for that. It was also at LA Studios, and I'd forgotten all about it. And then about 2 years later, the project is actually released. And I remember seeing his name in the credits on IMDb for this project. And I thought, I forgot he did that. Did he really do that? Sometimes IMDb gets it wrong. And then we watched the actual project, and he had forgotten he worked on it. And I remembered, oh, this was that time at LA Studios. And as we're watching the end of it, the credits are rolling. And as they get to the additional dialogue group, I pause it. And I said to him, you recognize that name? And he goes, I worked on that. I said, yeah, do you remember this, that, the other thing? And he goes, wow. I just did it just to see the look on his face.
oh, bless
So,
him. I mean, I'm looking at his IMDb right now. He's done Kingdom Hearts 3, Craig the Creek, Summer Camp Island, Hell of a Boss, Being Puppy Cat, Pretzel and the Puppies. He's got a good resume under his belt. And honestly,
he sure does.
what I respect about you and your wife is that you didn't pressure him into going into it. You just let him,
No,
kind of like decide. I know you put his name forward, but at least he
right.
enjoys doing it, because there
Yeah,
are some parents who will force their kids to go into the same industry that they're sort of in. But
right.
I know Carlos Alazraki's daughter Riley is a voice actress in her
Yeah.
own right, and I think Ray Delisle's kids have done some voiceover as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it is sort of a family tradition in some families. So
Yeah.
it's
And
really cool.
yeah, Carlos and I actually at Cartoon Network, and Carlos practically should have a wing at Cartoon Network for all the stuff he's done there, that and Nickelodeon. But I remember seeing Carlos at Cartoon Network, and we were sitting there in the green room. It was a place where we had both recorded many times, and neither one of us was working. We were both there for our kids. We just sat there and we thought, how weird is this? It's like, yeah, normally I would say, what are you working on? Or you and I, when you're done, I'll go in after you. We're going at the same time. Instead, we just sat there and ate the craft services. And we just thought, okay, yeah, how's your kid doing? Fine. How's your kid doing? Fine. And like you say, if he didn't enjoy the auditions, I wouldn't have had him do it, because I can't think of a quicker way to burn somebody out than to shove them into something like that. Now, he'll tell you this too. When I record him at home, when I audition him, I make sure that he does a good job. And I can be a little bit of a taskmaster. I can be a little bit of a hard ass sometimes. I'll say, no, read it as written. I'll make him do it till he gets it right. But I do that because I've got to make sure that he is going to be ready for the toughest director he'll ever work with, whoever that might be. They're always going to be very understanding with kids. But I figure, you know what? I would rather how to work with somebody that is a little hard to please than for me to just love everything you do unequivocally, because then I'm not preparing you.
Yeah. I've just found out something quite magical. When you and Carlos were at Cartoon Network, it turns out it might have been for the same episode or it might have been for a different episode, but Remy and Riley were actually on the same episode of Summer Camp Island, which is a Cartoon Network show. They could have been recording for the same episode, which was We'll Just Move the Stars, which he had in 2020, or it could have been I know Riley did series 2 and 3, and then No, she
Right.
did 1 and 2, and then Remy did 2 and 3. So it could have been for series 2. I don't know, but it would have been for that show most likely.
Yeah, it would have been, because I
So
remember
cool.
talking to them and them hanging out. And I remember the director for that. I forget their name, but they had directed me doing guest star stuff for Clarence for Cartoon Network. And then when Remy came in to work on Summer Camp Island, they
Christy
knew
Reed.
me. What's that?
Was it Christy Reed?
I think it might have been. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember saying, okay, you don't have to work with me, but here's my boy. And the thing about Remy is I would hear this sometimes. I'd say, how's he doing in there? Well, he's kind of over it. Look, we understand he's 7. Okay. So we know we're only going to get so much out of them.
Yeah.
And I remember telling him, I said, I know you're just a boy, you're just a kid, but this is a profession. They're paying you. You have to be a professional, and nobody should ever have to ask a 7 or 8-year-old to be a professional unless they're working in a profession. Then they have to learn, look, they're going to expect a certain amount of attention and focus from you. And you have to make sure that you stay on top of things. And that's a lot to ask, but I thought if you don't, they will find another kid who will. So, and I know you love doing this, and sure enough, yeah, he learned how to do that, and he's 12 now, so he's old hat at it. It's been more than 5 years.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's definitely got a good resume under his belt. As I said, I looked at his IMDb. Very, very. He definitely runs in the family.
Yeah, I'm very proud. Even if he were to never work again, I would tell him, look, you did some very good work on some really fun projects that will be around forever. And you got paid, and we put that money away for you, and you'll have something for yourself. But I imagine he will work again. And if he wants to, again, it's a question of whether or not it really is something you want to pursue, because I don't know if it ever gets easier until you sort of make a name for yourself as an adult. Because make a name for yourself as a kid, that's great, but that literally will only last a handful of years. And then you will sound different, and you will find that you're now competing against a brand new bank of talent, and there's a lot more of them. So you have to sort of ride that wave. It's up and down.
Yeah. And speaking of bank of talent, you were okay, right. I'm gonna get this name wrong, so I'm not sure if I got it right or wrong in the intro, but Gyro Gearloose.
Yeah.
Is that his name? Gyro. I thought it was Gyro. Gyro. Yeah. So wait, you said Gyro or Gyro? No, the Gyro doesn't sound right. That's
no, Gyro.
Gyro. I knew I'd had it. In DuckTales Remastered. Now, of course, that project brought back a lot of the original DuckTales VAs like Alan Young, June Foray, Brewster Taylor, and Terry McGovern, who I recently had on my show as well. And you were the voice of Gyro Gearloose for that game, who was originally voiced by Hal Smith.
Wow. Yeah.
So good hands. What was it like to work on that?
Well, it was great because it was not my first rodeo with Disney characters. So when I first joined Pat Brady's roster at her original agency, which is KSA, Kazarian Spencer and Associates.
Yeah.
I got the part of Timothy Mouse it was going to be, I can't remember what the exact project was for, but I ended up doing him for more than one thing. Well, it was originally for the ride at Disneyland. So they wanted to update the audio for the ride. So I became Timothy the Mouse. And I remember reading Timothy the Mouse for Disney character voices and realizing that, wow, they are really specific and highly detailed in how they cast these sound-alikes. It's a whole department for them, sound-alikes.
Yeah.
And you have to honor as best you can the original voice. However, if there have been a couple of generations of that voice, you're trying to sort of capture the most recent voice while still honoring the original voice, which was what the recent voice was doing. But it's like when you copy something in the old VHS days, if you copied a VHS tape too many times, the quality just kept getting degraded, and you would get so far away from the original that it barely resembled it. So I remember going through Disney character voices, getting Timothy Mouse, and then getting Scuttle for Little Mermaid, for like this ride they were doing in a video game. And they have a format they follow. They give you some lines from the original project. You do your best to match those. And then they give you brand new copy so that you can show them that you can take that voice that perfectly, or as perfect as possible, matches the original, and create a new performance with it without losing any of the spirit of the original. And that was the same with Gyro Gearloose. And this is a very detailed voice. This is not just somebody doing kind of a cartoony voice. This is Gyro, and he gets way up there, and he's sort of oh boy, like that. And this is a new invention I have called Oxy Chew. And you figure, okay, there's only a certain number of people that are going to kind of get in the ballpark for this. But even if I get it, like, how long can I do that voice for? You ask yourself, can I keep that up over a however long session? And that's another question you have to ask yourself. Can you do this for 4 hours if they need you to? Luckily, for a game like this, he's not like the main character of the game. But I remember thinking, it's a pleasure to, even in a limited capacity like this, just for one game, it's a pleasure to take over a voice. Because going forward now, if anything else happens with Gyro, I would think they would say, okay, at least give Chris first crack at it. Right. Yeah. But yeah, I found that if you add up all the Disney stuff I've done, it's these peripheral voices like Timothy Mouse and Scuttle and Gyro Gearloose, and nothing quite matches up to like when somebody's Mickey, right? Or Goofy like Bill Farmer, that those are the Disney legends.
He's up there.
Yeah, Bill's great. Bill's great. He's awesome.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I found that, I'm not a Disney legend. I'm a Disney sort of peripheral.
Yeah.
Right? You go to the park, you'll hear something I did, and then that's it. But there's no special exhibit, right?
Yeah. Well, at least you're there in some form, and probably many years to come.
Yeah, that would be nice. But there's that great movie, Jerry Maguire. If you're seeing the beginning of the movie Jerry Maguire, where Tom Cruise says, you ever see those pictures of a star athlete signing a multi-million-dollar contract and everyone's smiling, and there's that one face at the edge of the frame? That's me. I'm the agent. And that's kind of what I am. You ever see this really big project and all these big stars, all these hugely talented people? It's like, that's me. I was there. I was in it. And I was like worker number 3, right? So that's a substantial part of my career has been just something, around the edges. Around the edges. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Wow, that's really cool. And like, you're pretty much, if there's additional voices, your name will most likely be associated with it, no matter what credits it is.
There are a lot of us out there that we won't have the longest line of fans at the convention, but there are people that know what we do. And it's not like voice acting in and of itself is not glamorous because it's not on camera. It's not something that is as exalted as what the marquee names, get to enjoy. But that's okay. We don't mind that. We wouldn't have gotten into the business if it was just for the fame of it, because it doesn't really exist. There's more of it now because of conventions and the internet and all that.
Yeah.
But what we do is we go from one thing to the next very, very, very quickly. So Brad Pitt launches a movie and he does press for it for a year sometimes, and it's a huge undertaking. Whereas, back in the old days of going to different studios, some people like Fred will go to multiple studios in a day.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what they do. So, and I think we're proud to be able to have careers like that. To be able to just, where do you need me next? I'm there.
Yeah, and I think about the line at conventions thing, there was one thing I was told. Well, I met Kevin Conroy at his last UK appearance before his death, so it was a few months before he died last year. Someone told me at the event, obviously I only got to meet him in the photo op, his line was longer at one point than David Tennant's line.
Really?
Yes.
That's amazing.
I know.
Yeah. Although I guess I shouldn't be surprised. He has become so iconically attached to Batman, animated
Yeah.
Batman, to the point where,
he got me
Kevin
into the
Smith is putting
series.
him in his on-camera projects
Yeah.
because he
Yeah.
just wants the man in his
He just
project.
wants him. Yeah. And just like,
Yeah.
I regret not seeing him a lot more. Like, I was like, all right, I'll get back around to him. By the time I did, he was gone. I only met him at that photo op.
I never even got to meet him. I never got to work with him, and I never got to meet him. And that's obviously it's hard to regret something that you never even had the opportunity. But I wish I could have shared a booth with him. Wish I could have met him because everyone talks about how lovely he was.
Yeah.
And obviously how talented he was.
Yeah, of course. And it's coming up to 1 year anniversary of his death. And I'm just thinking, wow, that has gone fast. Like,
right. Yeah, it has. Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah, for sure. So Chris, I'd like to ask you one final big question. Now, of course, this is like the big question, maybe everyone's asking this, maybe it's just me, but I like to save this till the last, to my, this is my sort of, I completely think that up. I was like, how am I going to use my in this context? I don't know. But my big question to you is, Chris, it is all about your video game career. Now, of course, you have worked on a Lego Batman game, but that was Steve Bloom as Batman, not Kevin Conroy. And you've also, obviously, you did Alvin Wiener in Scooby-Doo Unmasked. So what was it like to sort of work for those two franchises?
Well, I remember the Alvin one, it didn't take too long. I don't think either one took very long. It's just you're aware that you're in this franchise that you've been enjoying since you were a kid. Like, who doesn't know the Lego franchise? Who doesn't know Scooby-Doo? I grew up with Scooby-Doo. One of the things I freaked out about when I was sitting next to Frank Welker was that's Fred from Scooby-Doo, and always has been Fred from Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
Since like 1970, I think, or 69 when it first aired. I thought that's insane.
No.
Yeah, always been there. So you just realize that you're happy to be a part of it. That's all. I'm a Jedi in the Clone Wars. I had one episode. I got to be a Jedi for one episode, but I'm part of the canon. My character is part of the canon. And so you just have this little bucket list of things. I got to do that. I got to do that. I got to do that. And video games offer a wonderful chance at that because you can do a lot of those. I mean, there was a stretch where I did a very high volume of them, and I've backed off of it a bit as of late because I've been lucky enough to have, knock on wood, other work happening, and a lot of video game work is vocally very strenuous. And I'm 54 now, and I just want to try and protect the old moneymaker as much as possible. So. But back in my 30s, I was doing a lot of them. I mean, I remember in 05, I think I did something like 21 games, and I've never done that many in a year again. But it was just one of those years where I was relatively new, and they thought, okay, because we've heard all these other guys and all these other games, we like to get some fresh meat in there. So I just started boom, 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 knocking off every available game and franchise. Just and my little additional voices, this guy, that guy, whoever, right? And you don't even know. You just get sort of dropped into this franchise in whatever capacity. Like I'm in a couple of Halo games and doing, all right, you're the brutes and then you're the grunts. And you're just thinking, wow, I get to say that I'm in it. And that's the madness of this business, that sometimes it happens in a blur. Just like, boom, you walk out of the session going, I can't believe I just did that. Okay. Yeah. So it's as cool as you'd think it would be.
Sweet. Wow. Chris, that was a wonderful way to end off our chat. Thank you so much for coming on my show. It's been a pleasure to host you, to speak to you about your career and everything. Just thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure just getting to share a little time with you. And I love finding that there are people who actually care about this stuff. You know, there are more of them out there than we realized. And between podcasts and conventions and things like that, I think
I think the fan world is very well represented. So thank you for giving a damn.
You're welcome, Chris, and likewise as well about the gathering and just lovely to speak to. So whereabouts can we find you online? What's your website URL? Have you got any social media?
I have the least amount of social media I can possibly get away with.
Do you want to promote your book? Your new
yeah,
book?
yeah, we should probably do that. Yeah. All right. Well, you can find me at Chris.Edgerly on Instagram, and I'm barely on it, but I do it just so I can have something. And I also have a Discord. It's Chris Edgerly, aka the Edge Voice. So if you play video games, you want to join a Discord community, we've got a pretty wholesome one. Yeah.
Yes.
We've got
oh my gosh. Right. I'm adding you right now. Hang on.
Yeah. We're very big on supporting other people, especially if they're creative. We have Creativity Saturday. I stream on Twitch, and we look at what anyone might have created over the past week, whether it's cosplay or art or building something. We love to celebrate that stuff. I get out that guitar there that I can barely play and strum it for a bit.
Wow.
So we have a good time.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, and my website is chrisedgerly.com. My wife is remaking it for me, so it may be a little glitchy right now, but you can go there and find out whatever I'm up to.
Yeah. What's your book all about? Is it fiction? Is it non-fiction? What is it?
It is fiction. I have a limited edition copyright here. It's called Soldier of Ages, Book 1, Tettenhall. Actually might be of interest to you. Depends on how much sci-fi and history you like, but whenever I would record a video game, and I played a few video games myself, and I've always been a big fan of history, and I like sci-fi a lot. I love fantasy. I used to play D&D a bit when I was a kid. And I remember I would talk to whoever was on the other side of the glass, the engineer or the director, when you'd have a pause in the video game. And I would say, wouldn't it be great if there was a video game where you could fight in any battle in human history? Like you could be a Roman centurion, then you could be a medieval crusader, and then you could be a samurai in Japan, feudal Japan. Wouldn't it be great if you could just choose a soldier and fight there? And they would always say the same thing. Yeah, and that would be the most expensive game ever made, Chris, because you'd have to build each era of civilization. You know how hard that is. They'd always look at me like, yeah, it's a great idea, Chris. I don't have $300 million, okay? I thought, okay, fair point. And then I thought, well, it would be fun as an RPG, but role-playing games are very hard to develop. My brother and I gave it a shot on Kickstarter, and we thought, yeah, let's try and make this happen as an RPG. But the idea wasn't really fully formed. So we canceled that. But I wouldn't let go of the idea. I absolutely love the idea of a character being a soldier that could fight in any war ever. And how would their approach change? What weapons would they have to use? What circumstances would they be in? And what does that say about history? You know, what kind of timeline is history following? Are we improving? Are we devolving? What kind of wars are we fighting now as opposed to 1,000 years ago? And finally, I thought, you know what? I think this would just work really well as a book. You don't have to worry about someone saying we don't have a budget for it. Your budget is your imagination. So I thought, all right, I'll write it as a sci-fi/history book. So I came up with Soldier of Ages, and it's about a man, Peter Kendrick, who wakes up in a sort of an alien space station with no memory of anything except his name. And this alien race known as the Time Guardians tell him, you volunteered to be a time soldier. And what we do is we keep order on the timeline of human history. We keep order in the universe. Whenever there's too much chaos, you get cracks in the timeline and things go haywire, and we can't have that. Too much chaos, the universe disintegrates. So we plug you in to battles throughout history because that's where the most chaos is. We make sure that the historical outcome of that battle happens the way it's supposed to. So you become a soldier, and we give you objectives to make sure that that battle happens the way it's supposed to according to this timeline. And I thought, geez, that sounds like a lot of time travel shows I'm used to, like Quantum Leap, or, you know, I did this before Loki came out. And then Loki comes out, and I'm thinking, oh, man, they got there first. And then I realized, well, actually, time travel is such a wide genre that it's just a thing that people write about. So I thought, all right, I'll write the book anyway. And the first battle that they put Peter Kendrick in is the Battle of Tettenhall, which was between the Danish Vikings and the Anglo-Saxons in, I believe it was 911 CE or AD, whichever one you're using. So I had to decide, all right, what battles am I going to do? And I really do love English history. And I really do love the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages. And I thought, this is a really interesting battle, not just because the Anglo-Saxons managed to pretty much rout the Vikings, but also because there is a female leader in the center of it who doesn't get a whole lot of credit. And no one in America knows who she is. And for 200 or 300 years after she died, even British historians didn't give her a whole lot of credit, but she gets a lot more now. Her name is Ethelfled. And I think there was a series in England called The Last Kingdom, I think.
I think so,
and,
yeah.
Yeah, it's about her. And I avoided watching it because I didn't want it to influence how I wrote Ethelfled, but I did some reading about her. And she was a pretty impressive historical figure. And she actually was responsible for building a lot of fortifications for Anglo-Saxons to keep them safe, even though they couldn't be there. If the Vikings ever came again, they had a way to defend themselves. And she helped lead her kingdom, even when her husband was not sort of featuring very prominently in a lot of the fighting. He sort of drops out of the historical record for a bit. And so Ethelfled, I thought, was kind of an overlooked character. I thought it'd be interesting to write her into this story a little bit and to have our main character interact with her. So what I decided to do is write a series of books. Each book would be one battle. And so Soldier of Ages, I'm planning on it being a 10-book series. The first one is Tettenhall. The next one is going to be in World War II at the Battle of the Bulge in Europe in 1944. But I thought each book should sort of reflect a story that's not been told enough in history. So I just don't think Ethelfled's story was known enough. Even in England, I don't know if she gets enough credit, although she does have a statue in somewhere around where I guess Northumbria or Mercia would be, somewhere in the Midlands, perhaps. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But I thought it was really interesting. So I thought this is a great way to write about history with a science fiction angle and tell a story that a lot of people might not know. And it would be a chance for people to read about history in a fun way. Yeah. And I have to make sure that I research it accurately enough to where I'm not writing about something that I can't either prove happened or no one can prove that it didn't happen. So if you go back 1,000 or 1,100 years to the Battle of Tettenhall, there's not many records there. There's a general agreement on what happened. So I managed to take a little bit of dramatic liberty where I can. But for the most part, everything I write about how it all happened is generally of a piece of how it happened. So if you're interested in a little bit of science fiction with a bit of history, then you can check out Soldier of Ages. It's available on Amazon Kindle. You can buy it and you can buy it on Barnes & Noble as well.
Ah, right. Well, in that case, I'll put in the description, the link to the Amazon page to get the Kindle version and the Barnes & Noble page for anyone in America who wants to buy a copy. I'm not sure where anyone in the UK can buy a physical copy or not. Is there any sort of...
Well, you can buy a Kindle copy. You can buy an ebook anywhere you live in the world, I think. Yeah. But we are going to release it as a paperback on Amazon. It'll look like this.
Yeah.
And that'll be available in a few more weeks. You'll be able to buy a paperback. So yeah, in not too much longer. And you can always just go to my website, chrisedgerly.com, or find me on Instagram. And I'm sure I'll have a link as to where you can buy it. But it's a fun read. And thanks to a Kickstarter campaign I did, my Discord community really got behind it and helped me fund it. Because the publishing company is Road to Ithaca Publishing. And that's my friend Anjali Bhimani, who you actually should have on your podcast. She's great. She's a very accomplished voice actress, and she does a lot of on camera, and she created a publishing company of her own to do independent publishing.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. I think I might have met her somewhere. I can't remember. I'll have to it might have been the same con. as Kevin Conroy. It might have been. Yeah, she was there.
She's got
She was
this.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll get everything linked in the description for you, Chris. As always, thank you so much for joining me. So, to you at home, thank you so much for watching this episode of In Conversation with ATF featuring the lovely Chris Edgerly. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I did filming it. Thank you for watching. Take care, everybody. Bye. And cut.